Yo, this is John Hope Bryant, and this is Money and Wealth on the Black Effect Network, the iHeart podcast platform. And I am talking about cash money, charge cards, and credit cards unpacked. I'm going to demystify all these things. You know, people who are underserved, black and brown folks who never got the memo. This is my fourth book, I think, on money. There's six in the series I've done, and the last one is Financial Literacy for All, by the way, bestseller, number one in business finance a year after publishing. Make sure you go get that. But the book, the memo I wrote, essentially said we're not dumb and we're not stupid. It's what we don't know that we don't know that's killing us, but we think we know. No one ever gave us a memo. No one ever taught us how money works. So we think that money is a thing. We want to. I want to get that bag. I want to get that cash. I want to get that dollar. I want to get that get that. You know, again, that bag, as if that's something. Literally, money is just simply a means of exchanging value, and we overvalue, no pun intended, money itself. The reality is you can run out of it, and most people who are not financially literate do. Um, when your outflow exceeds your inflow, then your overhead will be your downfall. And that's why they call it making a living, not building a life. So when you get paid, you're making a living. And typically you're only getting paid enough to subsidize the lifestyle that you have developed for yourself. Or put another way, your lifestyle tends to track how much money you make. So you got to find a way to build wealth separate from making a living. Did you get that? My brother Tony Wrestler taught me this lesson. He owns the Atlanta Hawks and built a bunch of companies. And I'm always learning from my friends. I'm just very nosy. Hopefully they're learning a little bit from me. I'm certainly learning from them. But one day he told me, you make money during the day, John, you build wealth in your sleep. Very, very simple message, but very powerful. And it's compounding: stocks, bonds, home ownership, equity, real estate in general, businesses, entrepreneurship, things that I personally believe education compounds, right? So let's get into these things that no one ever taught you, and supposedly somehow we're just supposed to magically understand. And before I get into the definition of money first, let me hit you with a news flash. Total credit card debt right now, because of massive financial illiteracy in this country, the biggest economy in the world, and because people have got too much month at the end of their money. They're literally living beyond their means by no fault of their own. The you know in, the rate of inflation, the rate of cost increases, the cost of living has outpaced their ability to make a living. Middle class incomes have not, since World War II, well, not World War II to be unfair, the 70s, middle class incomes have not kept up with the cost of living of all people, by the way. It's just when mainstream America has a headache, black and brown folks have pneumonia, but we're all sick. And it doesn't matter whether you're white, black, red, brown, or yellow. Everybody wants some more green. Can I get an amen? It's the church of what's happening now. And what have you done for me lately? So credit card debt, we're going to, again, I'm going to demystify and unpack all this stuff because people are just like ashamed to admit they don't understand this stuff. And I believe financial literacy is a civil rights issue of this generation. And AI literacy is the silver rights issue, SILVER, the civil rights issue of this generation. And I will get into what I define, or why I picked on civil rights as my moniker during the podcast. But credit card debt right now stands at $1.2 trillion. Again, I think financial literacy is a civil rights issue of this generation. It's just as important as the right to vote. And understanding financial literacy and understanding your credit score and managing it has a lot to do with your quality of life and whether you are a happy camper or you end up upside down. You may or may not know this. The number one cause for divorce in America is money. Number one cause for domestic abuse to the police is money. Number one reason that police officers get hurt on on the job are domestic abuse calls. Number one cause for heart attacks is, so says the American Heart Association, is stress. Number one cause for stress is money. And we don't understand money other than wanting to spend some. About 40%, give or take, of Americans in this country don't have $400 of their own money. Actually, yeah, $40 of their own money, pure cash, for an unplanned event, an emergency. Um, the number, I think, is generous. I think that number, that's a Federal Reserve report, but I don't think it. I think it factors in your ability to access a credit card. That's not your cash. That's, as I'll get into it, is borrowed money. I think that if you looked at just the ability to get your hands on cash, like it's your money, I think the percentage is much higher. I think it's as high as 60 some odd percent. But even the Fed or Reserve number of 37, 38, 40% is shocking in the biggest economy in the world. And 70% of the biggest economy in the world, this economy, the United States of America, is consumer spending. Let's go back to this credit card number, because it's really important to understand why I'm unpacking all this stuff so you can take care of not getting this. It's like there's a cancer flowing through your body. There's something affecting you. Disease could be, in many cases, dis-ease, and you don't know what it is. There's something chasing you. There's something burdening you, and you don't realize what it is. It's got you burdened down, weight down. You're sitting in your car right now going, yeah, that's me. And you don't know what it is. And it's this money thing. And you don't understand it. And maybe you do shopping. Maybe you shop for therapy sometimes because you're swiping that credit card because it makes you feel good in the short term, but then you get a sugar high. It feels good for a minute, then you get that bill, right? And so I want to empower you. I want to give you the tools to take your life back. Go to Operation Hope, get my book, Financial Literacy for All. Go to Operation Hope, get coaching and counseling. I'll give you $1,000 one-year scholarship for coaching and counseling at Operation Hope. Just tell them I sent you. Go to download the Hope and Hand app. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me get to. I'm so excited about this topic. Of course, I'm already jumping around, and there's so much to cover. So let me get all this in 45 minutes or so. Again, current credit card debt in this country, about $1.211 trillion. That's up from $1.166 trillion in the third quarter of 2024. This is being recorded in February 2025. This marks the highest balance since tracking began of credit card debt in 1999, ever, right? And student loan debt's about $1.7 trillion, give or take. So this is right behind it, right? And the average individual American carries a credit card balance of about $6,380, and balances are continuing to rise. Credit card debt increased by $45 billion during the fourth quarter of 2024, a 4% rise compared to the same period the year earlier. Interest rates haven't helped. Interest rates have climbed, as we all know. But what you may not know, and hold on to your seats here, the average credit card interest rate, the average, not for Pookie and them, not JoJo, not Boo Boo in the hood, the average interest rate for credit cards in America for the average American is 28.6%. Did you hear me? That means that for every dollar you charge on that beautiful, slick credit card that was given to you by that department store, pick the one you want to pick on here, that for every dollar you charge, you're paying about 29 cents on that dollar in pure interest, right? Hello. Wow. Just let that sink in for a minute. And when we go get auto loans or go shop, we often ask, certainly we go get auto loans. We don't ask, we ask what's the payment, right? And you don't ask what the payment is when there's an interest rate attached. You don't ask just what the payment is with an interest rate attached. There's a financial literacy lesson there for you. Tell everybody when you go I'll do a whole thing just on, in fact, I did a thing on the auto business. I'll do something on getting a great car loan. That's part of this series this year. Go back and watch the episode I did with Tony Marzullo on the car business. He's somebody you can trust. But oftentimes people show up in his lot, the more financially illiterate they are, the more misleading question they ask or the wrong question they ask. Again, what's the payment, not what's the interest rate. And this interest rate can knock you over the head. You go to a B car lot, B or C car lot, meaning a non-prime car lot, and someplace that carries their own paper, as they say, and you get a Mercedes from one of these B lots, and your credit score is toe up from the flow up, and they give you an 18% interest rate on that car loan on a $70,000 car, right? We're not talking about a $7,000 credit card balance right now. We're talking about a $70,000 automobile, and you're not driving a Mercedes. You're driving Mercedes payments, and that is an automotive bomb. It's going to explode on you while you're driving on the street. They just can't wait for you to bring that car back because car dealerships make their money actually not on the sales of the car, they make it on maintenance and finance. Or shall I say that the finance department and the maintenance department, there's three businesses within most automobile dealerships. It's sales, it's finance, and it's maintenance. Again, go back and watch and listen to the podcast I did on money and wealth in 2024 on this topic. It was one of the most highly rated episodes of the year, actually. Okay, it gets worse on this credit card thing. Delinquencies, credit card loan defaults have surged with over $46 billion in seriously delinquent loans. That means they're chasing you, right? Just to translate that. Written off in the first 9 months of 2024, a 50% increase from the same period in 2023, and the highest level since 2010. That should tell you a whole lot about where we are and the financial stress that people are under and why people are making decisions that they are making even around the nation's politics. I think that people are just financially stressed out. And and President Bill Clinton once told me something prophetic. He said, it's hard to get somebody to agree to the truth when the lie is paying your paycheck. Can I get an amen? 46% of American households held credit card debt in 2022. This is actually mostly higher middle income holders who have credit cards, by the way, credit card debt. And the implications for this, though, of credit card debt with lower income people is actually more problematic because it's very expensive to be poor. So why is this important? Why is this topic important? Because if your day's not about God or love, your day's about money. Anybody follow me? You've heard me say this, that like whatever the topic is, you can bring it back to the topic of money. Even marriages and even divorces. Like if two broke people, two hobos are getting divorced, it's really quick. It's faster than the divorce ceremony, right? Sorry, faster than the marriage ceremony. The divorce ceremony is just as quick because they're broke. The only thing that keeps something going forever in the courts is because of money. Child support, at the end of the day, it's about money. Maintenance payments, alimony, all that stuff. At the end of the day, it's arguing about this, arguing about that. But at the end of the day, it's about money. So let me now get to money. Are you with me so far? Can I get an amen? Or at least continue on. The evolution of money. This is going to start getting really sexy. Hold on a minute. The evolution of money started about 3000 BCE, which is, I would translate that the before Christ era. There's a spiritual way of saying this, and then there was a secular way of saying this. So I'll say BCE is before Christ. Some others would say it's the common era, right? But it's a prehistoric times before Christ. 3,000 years before Christ, right? People traded goods and services directly. The system was inefficient, though, because it required what's called a double coincidence of wants. In other words, I've got to want the same thing that you want at the same time in order for that to make any sense. And so that system existed, but then it was quickly replaced by commodity money. And these are things like gold and silver and shells and livestock as a medium of exchange, because it was, more asset based. And one of the problems I have with modern cryptocurrency, blockchain, I think is a brilliant technology, by the way, but most cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin is the exception right now. They have no asset base to them. There's like a gym membership that's popular or something. They're valuable because people hype them up. So just never, don't, I'm not saying cryptocurrency is not real. In fact, some of it is very real, and certainly digital currency is 100% real. Most money today is digital. I'm just saying, don't quote invest, because really you're speculating on the 12,000 plus cryptocurrencies that went poof and just exploded, went away, thinking you're gonna get your money back because it's somebody calls it a currency. It's really just speculation. You can win big, you can lose big. Don't use your rent money. Back to this. Um, some people have made it big, by the way. So, but again, just know what you're doing, because it's speculation. Commodity. One of my billionaire friends was at a meeting, and he said if somebody could tell him how cryptocurrency goes up, the value, and how it goes down, he'll buy some. And no one said anything in the meeting, and so he said, "No, thank you." Um, Commodity money, between 600, well, between 3,000 and 600 before Christ. So the years went from bigger to smaller as we get to year one in the period that was AD, uh, which is um in the life of the Lord, a year in the Lord, actually after, some will say after death, but it's after Christ's birth. Isn't it cool that Christ defines the before and after dates of the world? I think that's pretty cool. So 3000 BCE to 600 BCE, societies began using these valuable commodities. All right. Then metal coins came around 600 BCE. First standardized metal coin were minted in modern day Turkey. This made trading easier and more reliable. Modern money, okay, was the 7th century in the Tang Dynasty in, hold on now, China. Yeah, China's very old. China introduced paper money backed by precious metals, a concept that spread to Europe by the 17th century. And the gold standard, 19th century to the 20th century, many countries pegged their currencies to gold. This system lasted until the 20th century, when fiat currency, government-backed currency, took over. Now, before I go here, let me back up, because I'm jumping over a lot of stuff, covering a lot of ground in 45 minutes. And you can, in comments in social media, you can tell me what things you want me to go deeper on. If you want me to carve this out and create a separate podcast just on a topic, right? I'll go deeper. But before gold was used as a standard in the US for money to back it, silver was. And I like silver because it's like the common man's it's a common man's precious metal. And silver was used all around the world, not just in the US. In fact, it was used in Africa. I'll get to that in a minute. But it was used in the US before gold was used. But then in 1971, really to present, you've had what people call fiat currency. And they say it in a sort of a sly negative way, as if fiat currency is some negative thing. It's actually pretty gangster. The U.S. officially abandoned the gold standard under President Nixon. Today, money's value is determined by government's decree and trust in financial institutions, and is, quote, literally backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. Now, this is pretty gangster because this is the biggest economy in the world, about $29 trillion, and we can issue a dollar. And by the way, it is the flight to quality to this day in the world. Don't listen to all this noise out here about people saying there's a new currency in China, there's a new currency here, there, Russia, wherever Russia's currency is exploding actually. But the people keep talking about Russia. Russia's a rounding error to the U.S. economy. It's like 10% of the U.S. economy for anybody who's really interested. So it's really not a serious threat. They just threaten military and all kind of other things. And they got a gangster economy, a negative connotation of gangster, not the one I just used. It's just like North Korea's. But anyway, fiat currency is when somebody just says, "Hey, take me on my word." And China, Russia, all these oligarchs, all these people in these countries are talking all kind of madness about America, Iran, all these places. Guess where their leaders and their business leaders are trying to put their money, trying to make their investments? They want U.S. currency and they want U.S. assets. America's called what's in financial terms called a flight to quality in the world. So it may change, but at the moment, and we got to make sure we're managing our debt for this country because the deficit's ballooning and we're not doing a good job of managing it and investing in the biggest asset we've got for the next economic boom, which is our people. But that's another podcast for another day. But at the moment, fiat currency is pretty positively stated gangster. We've done it amazing. Everybody, we're a quarter of the world economy, and we're a fraction of the world's population. There's 8 billion people in the world, give or take, and America's about 350 million people, give or take. So check that out. Okay, now it gets interesting. I'm going to summarize these things, and I'm going to go back and tell you some cool things about Africa, and then some suggestions for you, and tell you about me and how I use these things, and in some cases screwed it up. Charge cards. This is the first cashless credit system. All right. Now, early forms of charge cards were started in the 19th and 20th century. Wealthy individuals and businesses use credit coins and charge plates issued by retailers for store purchases. Now, I'm not this old, but I did have a charge account at the Four Seasons Hotel on Doheny, or the Four Seasons at Los Angeles at Doheny, or Four Seasons Los Angeles at Doheny, Beverly Hills, whatever they call it. And when I was 20 years old, I used to go there after I left my office, and I didn't tell them, but I didn't have any money. I was going to have some money, but I didn't have the money at that day. I was managing cash flow as every entrepreneur does, and I think it was 20 years old, 21 years old, something. And I used to sign a document, a book. I signed the invoice with my signature, and they would carry the balance for me, and I'd pay it off once a month. So they would carry an in-house my charges on in-house books, and once a month or twice, once every sorry, once every twice, once a month or once every other month, I'd write them a check. Back then it was checks, and pay off the balance after I floated their money for a month or two, doing other things with it, like making other money. By the way, do you know that a check is nothing more than a form of removing value? For those who still use checks, you could take technically the back of somebody's T-shirt, write pay to the order of, write a routing number and a account number and a few other things that makes it legal, and sign it, pay to the order of. And technically, you get into a big fight with the bank, but technically you can take that person's T-shirt and go to the bank and challenge them to cash their T-shirt. Isn't that cool? It's pretty cool just to understand these things. Okay, so credit cards started with Diners Club in 1950. Now, not 1850, 1950. Show you how big this economy is and how fast it's grown, and why I want you to treat financial literacy like it's breathing, because this thing is just wild. The world is 5 billion years old, and America is goes back to the 1600s and all this kind of stuff. But really, like 50 trillion of the $150 trillion of asset value net worth today in America was created since the year 2000. That's last 25 years. That's another podcast for another time. But I want you to understand how quickly this stuff compounds and builds on each other, and it can just run away from you and get away from you, and you don't understand anything, and you end up with $7,000 worth of credit card debt, paying 29% with too much month into your money, and trying to figure out where did all your money go. With somebody smarter than you separated you from your wallet, that's what happened. So anyway, 1950, the modern charge card was launched by two entrepreneurs. It allowed users to pay for meals at participating restaurants and required full payment each month. This is very important because the next credit card was created in 1958. It's called the American Express, one of my favorite cards. And I have the Amex, the vaulted Amex Centurion card, the black card they call it, which you cannot apply for. They've got to give it to you, which technically I could purchase the hotel I'm staying in or walk into a car dealership lot and put my credit card down and buy a Ferrari, technically. But the thing about so the Amex was created initially for traveling, and it evolved into a much more premium product. But it was created in 1958, but it requires also you to pay the full bill in 30 days. So these two cards, the Diners Club card and the American Express card, are two great examples of a charge card. It's not a credit card. You must make the payment, full payment, every month. So I'm not going to get you into my business, but I run a very big business and I travel a lot. And uh, I will put um, business charges, well, I'll put all charges on my card. I'll be reimbursed. I don't want an expense account. You don't want to do that if you're running a nonprofit, by the way, for sure. You don't want an expense account. You want an expense report, right? So expense account, which means they just give you some money and say spend it and tell us how you spent it. I think you're just asking for trouble. Um, I have an expense report, which means I put it on my own card, and then the expenses that are related to Operation Hope or related to Bryant Group Ventures or Bryant Group Advisors or Bryant Group Real Estate or Promise Homes Company or the other ventures I'm associated with, they reimburse me based on a written report that I give them of my what's called an expense report. Okay, but I charge a lot every month, and I get reimbursed, and I pay the whole bill every month. And if I really thought about where I was 20 years ago, I would have a heart attack knowing 20 years forward. If I heard 20 years forward what I'm paying, like 20 years ago, if I was 30 years old and I look forward to see what I'm paying for my credit card bill every month, I would have a massive heart attack. But I managed it just fine, and have never missed a payment. I also do this because I get points. So when I go to, if you see me in Maui or you see me in Turks and Caicos, I'm not paying for it. Turks and Caicos pays for itself. That's more complicated, the explanation, but it pays for itself. The airplane tickets are reward tickets. So you see me sitting, me and my wife sitting in first class going to Turks and Caicos or Maui. That was because of points. Amex points. You see me in a rental car, points, free. Hotels often. If you see me on a non-business trip, why do I stay at the same hotels versus trying to floss and stay in these boutique places? I stay in the same brands all the time because I'm building up my point balance. And so when I'm ready to go on vacation, or whether reward my assistant Tina Fair, or want to reward somebody on my team with a vacation someplace, or allow my wife to go on vacation, or my family members, I don't have to give them cash. I can give them the points for a hotel stay, and then points for a rental car, and then points from my Amex card, which is just like cash, by the way, to pay for miscellaneous. And I have points from the airlines. So I really treat credit cards like a partner to me in cash flow and benefits management. I could stop the podcast right there. That was a lot of benefit for you. I hope you got that. Credit cards now, the birth of revolving credit. Bank of America, this is deep now, 1958. Why are you saying, why are you mentioning Bank of America? Because that's where the first credit card came from. The first revolving credit card created, I believe, to compete with American Express in 1958. The first revolving balance credit card came from Bank of America, and this later became, hold on, Visa. I've got in my one or several in my wallet. You got them in your wallet. And then in 1966, the year I was born, MasterCard was born by a group of banks. They created MasterCard. They created Master Charge, that later became MasterCard. And they created that to compete with the Bank Americard. Did you hear what I said? It was not called originally um, Visa. It was originally the Bank Americard, right? That ultimately became Visa. And then And then these other bankers created this, and that was created to compete with American Express, right? Which got their and American Express got their idea from the Diners Club. See how this competition in capitalism, and then most best good things in life are copied. I mean, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates got a lot of their brilliance from looking at what Xerox PARC was doing in IBM, and they don't, just IBM and Xerox PARC did great things, but weren't as great marketers as Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were. And likewise, these, Visa, MasterCard, and Amex sort of have emerged as the global winners from this competitive explosion in credit cards that happened in the 20th century. Discover and other innovations arrived in the 1980s. And to present, Discover entered the market in 1985, offering no annual fees and cashback rewards. Credit cards evolved with magnetic strips and chips and contactless payments, and it's still evolving, right? And of course, we have debit cards, and I hope you know what a debit card means. Otherwise, you're going to go broke. A debit card literally means it's going to debit directly out of your account. It doesn't matter if it says Visa or MasterCard on it. Those are just payment platforms and databases and systems. When you swipe that card, it's taking the money out of your account. It's not like the old days with a check where you write it and float the check for 3 or 4 days, and you can run around trying to find the money before that check hits the bank and gets processed, and then you can put the deposit in to catch it as it's sliding in. Somebody, the joke was, "I can't be broke. I still have checks left." That day is over. Debit card swiping is immediate. Origins of money in the world. Money in its earliest forms originated in Mesopotamia. I got to say that slowly. Or modern day, hold on, Iraq. Again, around 3000 BCE, before Christ. Um, and the Sumerians and the Babylonians developed one of the first recorded monetary systems using silver. Hello, remember I told you that, and grain as units of exchange. They used standardized weights of silver, shekels they called them, and stored grains to facilitate trade, moving beyond barter. Now, as all these pieces start to link together. All right, now let's fast forward now. I want to cover a lot of history now in a short period of time. I hope you're enjoying this. Let's talk about Africa. Africa played a significant role in the history of money. I don't know how people are talking about Africans are dumb or stupid or lazy. I don't know where they get that from. Africa is the biggest untapped natural resource in the world to this very day is the African continent. The first human being walked upright in Africa. I'm gonna do a whole podcast on this, really inspired by um, uh, uh, the black um, space genius, Neil Tyson, I think is his name, um, where we talked about DNA and all that stuff. So I'm going to do a separate podcast on that. But Africans were geniuses, and they were involved in the early development of money. Uh, they both were in early trade systems and the development of early currencies. And specifically, before coined money, African civilizations used commodity money. And this starts like in 300, um, after the year 300 after Christ's death. So the first one that you should know about is cowrie shells. They were used widely in West Africa. Cowrie were one of the most recognizable forms of currency for centuries. Then gold dust and nuggets, used extensively in West Africa, particularly in the Ghana, Mali, and Songhai empires. That's around 300 to 1600 Common Era, or after AD, right after Christ's death. Salt bars. Yes, I said salt. Salt bars. And by the way, everybody's saying capitalism's evil, and people dealing with capitalism and free enterprise and money since the beginning of time, right? The Bible talks more about money than any one thing. Hello, I think over 2,000 references. The only time Jesus got upset is when he turned over the tables of the money changers in the Bible. So, like, get with this system because it's gotten with you whether you like it or not. Like this again, this is as important as the right to vote. It's almost as important as breathing. I want to relieve your stress and move you from a surviving mindset. This is my book, Up From Nothing, to a thriving mindset, to a winning and building mindset. That means that all this stuff is important. Salt bars. In the trans-Saharan trade, salt was so valuable that it was used as currency, particularly in the Sahara and Sahel areas. Copper, iron, and brass rods. Many African societies use metal as a form of currency, especially in Central and Southern Africa. The gold trade. West Africa was a major supplier of gold to the Mediterranean and in European economies from 800 to year 1500. Did you hear me? It gets deeper. Empires like Ghana and Mali and Songhai controlled vast gold mines and traded with North African merchants, influencing global markets. This one's a famous example from the 14th century. The Mansa Musa, what a cool name, Mansa Musa. We got, don't go naming your child Mansa Musa now, right? I want to be able to get a job, right? Mansa Musa, that was a good joke, sorry. The ruler of Mali in the 14th century famously disrupted the Egyptian economy with his lavish distribution of gold during the pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324. Just completely tore up inflation ran amok because he was just distributing. He was intentionally distributing his riches everywhere and inflating everything around him. Today we'd say, let's see example, it's like 25% inflation, all right? Where we're arguing about 2 and 4 and 5% inflation in America. African kingdoms and the use of coinage. Some African civilizations minted their own coins. By the way, the U.S. did the same thing. I'll get to that in a minute. The Aksumite Empire, which is modern day Ethiopia and Eritrea. By the way, you know those people, those two groups are related, right? They had been warring with each other. It was, for the longest, it was two cousins fighting, Eritrea and Ethiopia. You look at them, you're like, y'all the same people. What's going on? Okay, anyway. The Aksumite Empire produced gold, silver, and bronze coins as early as 270 CE. This is the Common Era after Christ's death. The Sultanate of Kilwa, modern day Tanzania. I've been to about half of African countries. Tanzania is fantastic. They minted their own coins in the 11th to the 14th century, facilitating Indian Ocean trade. African gold was a primary driver of the European Renaissance financial system. The gold from West Africa supplied European mints and helped finance banking families like the Medici in Italy. You heard all about the Medici. You don't hear about where they got their gold from that backdoored their new monetary and financial system and credit system. It was from Africa. Portuguese, Dutch, and British traders established commercial relationships with African kingdoms. I'm about to get a little controversial here, but it's just the facts. Exchanging goods, firearms, textiles for gold, ivory, and slaves. Yes, Black Africans were also in the slave trade. They didn't know they were pushing them off, sending them off to dang on American transgressions and world horror. But you got folks to the coast somehow, and that's a whole nother story for another time. I will do a special piece this year on Africa. Okay. So there's good capitalism, by the way, and bad capitalism. Good capitalism is where I benefit and somebody else benefits more, and bad capitalism is where I benefit, somebody else pays a price for it. Slavery is an example of bad capitalism. Am I going too far? Am I going too fast, going too far with you? I hope not, because we've covered a lot of ground so far, and we're heading in here to the home stretch. Okay, let's talk about the U.S. and then we'll start talking about how entrepreneurs and business people can use good credit and some examples for you. The development of money and currency and credit in the United States has undergone significant transformation since the colonial era, shaping the nation's economic landscape. In 1619, a company, not a government, by the way, the Massachusetts Bay Colony. By the way, do you know that the first democracy was a company? Do you know the first government was a corporation in America? Don't trust me on any of this. Check it out yourself. The 1600s. All right. The Massachusetts Bay Colony, and I just like throwing this in just because it's going to just fry your brain. And somebody said, what did he say? Like, go deeper on that. The word white, the racial word white, completely made up. It's not real. After 5 billion years in the world, 4 billion years of organism life, 200 million years of Neanderthal life, and a couple hundred million years of a modern human being life, 3,000 years of life in the Enlightenment, post Christ. The word white was created about 400 years ago, just in North America, for political, power, and economic reasons. And white people and black people used to be friends when they were both indentured servants. Again, it was all about money, and I'll deal with that when I deal with my podcast on slavery that I'm going to do, which is going to be non-emotional, just the facts. So the Massachusetts Bay Colony issued the first paper money in the American colonies to fund military expeditions, right? All right, that was 1619. In 1775, during the American Revolutionary War, the Continental Congress began issuing their own currency. They were called Continentals, but they went too far and they became counterfeited. They printed too much of it. It severely depreciated, and they became worthless basically by the end of the war. So in 1785, there was a first attempt to create an official currency by the Continental Congress. In 1792, there was a Coinage Act, introducing basically denominations and standards. There was a free banking era now between 1837 and 1863, where basically everybody just did their own thing. So you had, again, I love picking on Boo Boo and Pookie and them, but you had, the corner store, you had individual banks, you had individual companies. Think about a car dealership issuing their own currency. Their own, cities and states issued their own currency. It was wild. It was crazy. It was no, it was just a wildcat era. It was like no supervision whatsoever. And you should, for kissing and giggles, go buy some of this old currency and frame it and put it on your wall. Some of it will be worth a lot of money at some point. In 1863, after the Civil War, there was a National Banks Act that tried to make sense out of this chaotic currency and create some standardization. And then you had the National Banking Act. The National Banking Act was followed by the Federal Reserve in 1913, established the Federal Reserve System as a central bank for the United States, aiming to provide a safe and more flexible monetary and financial system. That's just 1913. And then I've already talked to you now, brought you up to speed to the evolution of credit. I talked about, shopkeepers extending their own credit, keeping their own books on the ledger, which is what I did with Four Seasons Hotel. I talked about the 1950s and credit cards, and like the Franklin National Bank of Long Island issued the first modern credit card. Well, B of A might might argue with them, but that's actually probably true. 1951, 1958, B of A issued that fancier card. I've already mentioned the card that happened in the 19. It was a lot of people competing for credit at this. No pun intended, for credit. By the way, the word credit comes from the Latin root word credito, which basically means credibility. And I've already talked about the modern credit era. Okay, so now I brought you up to speed, and let me now talk about businesses and entrepreneurs and the use of credit, and talk about you. So I'm a businessman. I'm an entrepreneur. Also, those two things are different. Businessman or businesswoman has a standard business plan, and an entrepreneur is crazy like me and creates something out of whole cloth that's completely new and different and never been done before. And oftentimes we don't, when we're starting, we don't have backers. We don't have. You come from the hood where I came from. You don't have backers, so I used Pep Boys for my auto expenses. I used Sears credit card when I needed to buy office supplies and furniture and some clothes. I used Radio Shack. You guys remember that? For my computers and my electronics and my mobile phone. I had a phone that was like a brick that went over my shoulder. It weighed like 30 pounds, and it was like 45 cents a minute. It was analog phone calls before digital. cellular phone calls. You guys remember this? It was 45 cents a minute, and the phone itself cost $3,000 to $5,000 to $10,000, depending on your brand, your model. I remember I was thinking I actually have a phone in my car at a 1967 Mustang in the hood, and I couldn't afford a mobile phone. But you could go to Radio Shack and buy a fake mobile phone kit, which was a fake phone receiver, a cord that would go under the dashboard, a fake antenna. Remember the antenna that had the swirls on it? Yes, there were actual antennas for anybody who's a millennial. And the antenna would go on you tape it, two-sided tape go on your windshield. And sometimes if you really want to show you were a big baller, you had two antennas on your car, or four antennas. You saw brothers with six antennas in their car. Or you people had they would drill holes in their car, would put huge antennas. The bigger your antenna, supposedly the more power you had. A lot of the stuff was just like me, just profile. I remember one day I had a date in the car and I was driving down the street and I was turning the corner. So supposedly was on the phone profiling and moved the wrong direction and the cord popped out from under the dashboard and hit me in the head. So yeah, that had nothing to do with the story. But I use credit cards episodically to facilitate the different things I needed because I didn't have any equity capital. So just so you know, capital is debt and equity. So equity is money that you own that's either you've gotten yourself or somebody invested with you. That equity, to make payments on it, that's equity. Debt is a form of obligation. It's also capital, but is a form of obligated capital. You have to pay it back, and there's typically payments tied to it. I'll do lines of credit, things like that in another podcast. But oftentimes, if you're from the hood, you don't have equity, and you don't have inherited wealth, and you don't have wealthy parents. At least none that will give you any of their shekels. See, their shekels. We're using these phrases today. We don't even know where it comes from. Give me some shekels, man. You got some shekels? And uh, And so if you're in from the hood and you have bad credit, one of the reasons that people in the hood have these underground businesses is they're going to Pookie and them, Luigi or whatever around the corner and getting very expensive debt as a loan. And the only way you can pay back this loan that's 30, 80, 100% interest in sometimes is with illegal enterprises. So they're matching the expensive debt with illegal ways to pay it back. And you you increase your credit score, you increase your financial fluency, you can now go to the bank and get prime credit and just engage in a regular business that will actually allow you to live and it will last a lifetime versus these businesses tied to illegal activity where there's probation, prison, parole, or death tied to it. So businesses, if you have a choice, get a business credit card, but I use a personal credit card and just assign it to business purposes. I would encourage you to understand the difference between a credit card and a charge card when you get these cards, because if you get an American Express card in business and you've got a invoice that doesn't pay for 60 or 90 days based on terms, but you have a charge card that requires you to pay back in 30 days, and you're putting the expense. So here's one lesson in business. You don't want to typically finance long-term equity with short-term debt. You don't want to finance something that's a long-term obligation with a short-term credit facility that requires payments right now. I know I'm covering a lot in a short period of time, but you're smart. I know you can get this. You can also hit replay and play it over and over again and take notes until you get it. Get all your buddies together, ladies together, get your girls together and have a conversation about this and talk about it amongst yourself. There's no dumb here. There's no dumb answer. Nobody taught you this stuff. So how could there be a wrong answer? It's just what you didn't know, right? So um, you want to align up your terms of your repayment with the terms of your payments. That's the easiest way and that's called cash flow management. I've already talked about reward benefits. That's a big reason why I use credit cards. I also like using credit cards because it allows me to monitor my expenses, because credit card companies will send you detailed, particularly Amex, will send you detailed printouts of which categories of spending. They'll help you basically create a budget with cash flow management. It allows you to also monitor employee expenses. And my suggestion is you look at these expenses every week, no less than every month. right? You should pull your credit at least once a quarter. I think you should pull it every month. I look at my credit report every couple of days on the outside. If you do this the right way, doing a business credit card will help you ultimately get a business credit facility and a business credit line. I want you to be mindful of fees and interest rates, which I've talked about already. And I want you to make sure you're complying with the law when you're using all these facilities. And I remember that Al Capone, who's a famed or infamous gangster, they couldn't catch him on murder and mayhem, but they got him for tax evasion. I'd rather owe my mother money, God rest her soul, than owe the federal government a dime. They ain't playing. You don't want to you want hardcore interest rate payments. Owe the IRS some money and see how painful it is, how much interest they're charging. And they're not trying to hurt you. They're trying to discourage you from having them as a lender. They want to be the lender. The IRS wants to be the lender of last resort. But if you have a choice between a payment arrangement with IRS, which they become your credit facility, your credit card. That's not a charge card. That's a credit card in that example, because you want payments that are monthly. If you have a choice between owing them money and not paying them, or putting them on a credit payment plan, do the latter. Do not blow them off, even if it's very painful. And I've done it. I've owed them money. I've had payment plans and had to pay them back, but it was a time value of money, time value, opportunity cost of money. Write that down. Time value, opportunity cost of money. And you mix and match the credit card or the credit line, or your cash is available with the credit facility that you have. I'm gonna give you a little bit of a rich person's twist here. There is a credit facility, by the way, that is the bank of you. Now, I don't want you going crazy with this, right? I want you coming to me telling me that, oh, John, you gave me bad advice. This is a sophisticated thing I'm about to tell you. I want you ultimately I want you to do 401k, right, with your employer. If your employer is giving you employee match, that's free money, take as much money as there is available, match it to the maximum. I want you to get your earned income tax credit from the federal government. I want you to do all that stuff. I want you to buy a house. I want you to have a will and an insurance plan, all that stuff, right? A term or whole life insurance policy, so on and so forth, right? I want you to use credit cards and charge cards responsibly. Okay, good. I want you to open a stock account and do it conservatively, right? No fancy stuff. Don't invest in cryptocurrency and call that traditional conservative investing. It's not. It's speculation. There's a place in your portfolio for it, but it should be no more than 10%, in my opinion. When you get a stock account with strong assets in it, not flaky stuff. Let's assume you have a stock account now that has $10,000 balance. I'm just picking a number, right? You can get what's called a margin account. Once you're there and you have an established relationship with your brokerage, you can get a margin account against your marketable securities that's in that account. And you can borrow from the bank of you up to X percent, 50% to 70%, depending on the securities in the account and how marketable they are, how institutional they are, right? Blue chip, they call it. So if you have a $100,000 securities account, this is not your 401k. This is you're investing in the stock market, right? You have an account valued at $100,000 in this example. You could borrow from yourself at typically better rates than the bank, up to $70,000 in that example. You got to pay it back, and here's the downside. If those stocks ever go down to a concerning point, let's say the easy example here is they go down. Let's say you have a $100,000 account and you borrow $50,000 against that for whatever business or home purchase. By the way, it's your money. You can do as you will. And by the way, you get to write off the cost of the debt on your own bank of you account off your taxes sometimes. Check with your tax pro. Don't say that John Bryant told you this. Your tax pro, everybody's situation is different. But in this example, you owe $50,000 against a $100,000 margin account. Okay, this is your stock, so this is your money. You're borrowing against yourself. You want to pay that back, so you want to plan to pay that back. If you don't pay it back, and if that stock portfolio you got was flaky, and that value goes down to, I'm making it up now, $65,000 versus 100,000. I don't think this would happen, but it might. There could be what's called a margin call, where they say, look, you're over leveraged. You got to now pay off this $50,000. We're uncomfortable that your value's now gone from 100,000 down to $60,000. This happened in Silicon Valley, by the way, all the time with these startup companies where the stock goes up to $1 billion and goes down to 100 million. The person's done all this lifestyle purchase stuff and they got a credit line of $200 million against $1 billion of stock. And now it's only worth, I'm making this up, $150 million worth of stock. And now they're upside down. The bank goes and takes all their stuff. I don't want that happening to you. So don't get over leveraged, but it is a tool. All right. This is John Hope Bryant. I'm tired of hearing myself talk. This was an exciting episode. Let me know what you learned, whether this was valuable. Let me know what I missed out or what else you wanted to know. And I'll do it on the next episode or one of them coming up. I do listen to all of your comments and suggestions. I do read the comments myself between all my business activities and traveling. I love you very much. I want you to win. This is the Civil Rights Movement, SILVER, from the streets to the suites. This is John Hope Bryant. This is Money and Wealth. Go get my book, bestseller, Financial Literacy for All. The book before that, Up From Nothing. The book from that, The Memo, How the Poor Can Save Capitalism, Love Leadership, Banking Our Future. But I really think you should get Financial Literacy for All. And sit down with your family and talk about money. I want you to go take this $1,000 offer I've given you of a 1-year coaching credit with Operation Hope to get your credit score right, get your budget right, get your life right, take control of your life. Tell them I sent you. What else do I want to give you? Oh, some advice. Go tell all your friends to follow Money and Wealth. It's growing like nobody's business, and we're on for a new movement to help set our people free through financial literacy. That's my rap. It's like Jay-Z said in his 444 album, this is $1 million worth of game for $9.99. This is none 99 because it didn't cost you a dime, just my time. All right, love and light. John Hope.